Thank you for your participating in this webinar on an NSD Compact document. I'm William Parra. I am the NSD coordinator in Panama IFRC office. The webinar will have two parts. The first presentation by Naomi Akamatsu, colleague of the PSK unit in Geneva, and then time for question and answers. Please make your comments directly in the webinar chat. We are going to record the webinar for all. And nothing more. Good morning, everyone. Please, Naomi, can you start?
Yes, thank you very much, William, for your introduction. And again, as William mentioned, we hope that this webinar is not just going to be presentation from my side, but we really want to open up the latter part of the presentation, this webinar, for more clarifications or your comments or questions. In the meanwhile, I think if you do have any questions while I'm giving the presentation, please do not hesitate to share your questions through the chat box. And to make the webinar smoother and hearable for everybody, just during the presentation, which wouldn't last long, just 20 minutes, I'd appreciate if you could maybe mute your microphone so that we can have a good environment to hear the sound.
Sorry, Naomi, just to let William know that he can mute everyone. Please mute all the participants so the sound will be clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margarita. I hope I'm not muted. Right. So as mentioned by William, the first part is the presentation. And the purpose of this presentation is to supplement the letter that has been sent out by the Federation Secretary General at the later part of June. So this letter had been including all of the documents that are expected to be put on the decision for this General Assembly end of this year. And there was a document called National Society Development Compact as part of that. Today in this webinar, I'm trying to go through what this NSD Compact is, giving you a little bit of a background where this comes from, and also what kind of other document that links with, and also to give you the main structure of what this compact is. So the document itself is quite lengthy, but through this webinar, I hope I can share the outline of what this compact is, so that it would allow you to have a better reading of the compact when you go back to the text itself. So let me start the presentation. And again, appreciate if you can mute your microphone just for the first 20 minutes. So first of all, this compact, to develop this compact, this came from the decision of the Governing Board Working Group. So there's a Governing Board Working Group on strong national societies and volunteering. And this Governing Board Working Group has been tasked to look into various elements that needs to be taken in consideration to strengthen national societies and volunteering. Last April, they had a decision to look into developing a compact to consolidate and bind everybody's agreement on how we support national societies for their development. And after this first decision, the drafting process has started with various inputs from the Governing Board Working Group themselves, which has consisted of 5 members of national societies in this working group. And the very first draft was shared this April, and be commented that it's been very clear, simple, and focused for the original purpose that was intended. Now, with this first draft, it was then agreed and also called by this working group to go into a federation-wide consultation process. And this is the part where it links to that letter that was sent out to all national societies in June to open up this consultation process and to have your feedbacks and comments into it. Once we have this consultation, this draft version would be then revised with your comments and then finalized with the working group. And then the working group would submit it to the governing board itself this October. And with their final approval, then it would be in the discussion table for the General Assembly in December this year. So that is where this compact is coming from, and also a little bit looking forward where it's going to head towards. Now, the purpose of this webinar is to also make sure that this consultation process is not just all done by email and asking you to read the fully lengthy document and then send your comments back in writing. But I hope that this latter part of this webinar, where we open up for discussions and also your comments, we would like to take in consideration all of your questions and also inquiries or comments as part of the consultation process. Now, with that as a background, I also want to highlight a little bit of the history of the existing documents that we have around National Society development. So in 2013, there was a framework called National Society Development Framework being approved in the 2013 General Assembly. Now, this framework is the key document, and this new compact is not going to replace this framework. It's more to supplement what the framework says. I'll come back to that point a little bit more details in the next slide. But before that, I would like to revisit what is written here in the framework itself. So this framework, and as maybe many of you already know it by heart, but this highlights what is it that we talk as a strong national society. So it defines what a strong national society is. And quickly going through, it is saying that, well, there are many aspects of strong and voluntary organization. The most important strategic thing that's mentioned here is that a strong national society is living up to a clear focus and is having a well-known mission, which is also run at least by one well-known national-wide services in a permanent basis. So even with the most financial constrained moment, it has a service that it can run by its local resources. And this is to be covering not just at the main city or at one area, but it covers the countrywide with the local branches that are recognized as strong and local actors and sustainable as well. And it also is representing and leading the local work that is based on the vulnerability and requests from the local communities. And it also eventually has the national and regional capacities to temporarily support these local branches to scale the services based on the situation on the ground. And also covering through a mix of different income sources, so that it is also managing the risks of not relying only on one donor. And it's mobilizing good governors or leaders, members and volunteers, and continues to attract and keep competent staff members, volunteers, and also membership, and in always being accountable to the members and the communities it serves, and to the donors and partners. So this is, I've tried to outline what is elaborated here as a strong national society, and in shorter words you can see it in the red box. And also here the framework highlights that the key message here is to make this strong national society, the primarily responsibility sits with the national society themselves. And national society themselves are not an international service deliverer, but delivering international programs that are developed internationally, but the national society themselves are the primarily domestic organizations. And also the senior leadership has the key role and responsibility for running this national society and ensuring the healthiness of the national society. And also, as mentioned earlier in the definition of a strong national society, the national society is able to mobilize support from all relevant Red Cross partners as well as non-Red Cross partners. And it's clear that its core services are identified and able to carry out at scale. So this, I wanted to highlight again, is what is written in this framework, because this is what we see as strong national societies and where we want to achieve in developing national societies. So this framework, as being the backbone of what we are talking about national society development, here comes in the part where the compact is supplementing. So the National Society Development Compact, this new document that you now all have in front of you through the letter, is again not to replace this National Society Development Framework. It is more putting a specific focus and highlight in one specific area that is mentioned in the framework, which is the National Society Development Support. So while the framework articulates all of the different elements of a strong national society, this compact is then saying, okay, to support the national societies to become developed and stronger, what is it that needs to be taken in consideration, and what is it the roles and commitments of each actors to ensure an effective support. So the compact defines what NSD support is, and it has main foundations, in a way, a principle that needs to be followed by all actors when engaging in national society development support. And then it all outlines the main roles and responsibility for various actors, including national societies themselves who receive the support, the national societies who provide and share the support, the Federation Secretariat, and also whenever external organizations are considering in joining the National Society Development Support. To give you in a brief nutshell picture, this is how it's been structured, and I'll go into the details in the following slides. So as shared of the aim of the compact, with that in the mind, there are 3 priority areas set at the very beginning, and then the 7 foundations, which are the 7 principles that need to be considered when engaging in national society development support, and the 4 commitments, which outlines the commitments of each actor. And then lastly, it calls for resourcing national society development support. So let's go a little bit deeper in each element. So first of all, the compact first defines what national society development support is. So here it defines any support provided by an external actor to a national society. That's one thing. Another thing is, it is based on the request and priorities that the national society themselves have identified. And the third thing is, a national society development support is that purposefully contributes to help that national society to achieve and maintain a sustainable organization which is able to deliver relevant, quality, and accessible services. So this is what is defined as national society development support. And then comes the 3 priority areas. So these 3 priority areas is 1 is volunteering, 2 is financial sustainability, and 3 is integrity, transparency, and accountability. Now, why these 3 priority areas is first set in the document is because when we actually see national societies asking for support, or when it's going through its own development processes, while there are so many various elements that are in that process, we often see these 3 headings that are often been coming up as the key things that mobilize that change processes. So volunteering are key when you look into how your branches are running the services, how to structure your organization. Volunteering is a key element to consider about. Also, when you are developing the organization or going through a change processes, you need to also, there's a lot of thinking around how then is the financial implication of the national society and how to make it as sustainable as possible. There's also a lot of thinking and discussions around ensuring integrity, transparency, and accountability of a national society. These, again, by setting these 5 priorities in the compact, we're trying to say that it is not limiting of what we are doing in NSD in these 3 areas, but we want everybody who is engaged in this compact to understand that whenever engaging in whatever kind of NSD support, these 3 priority areas are key to be also taking in consideration how your work around NSD is linking or enhancing the 3 areas of the national society. National society's capacity. So that is the purpose of setting the 3 priority areas, to raise awareness of the importance of these 3 areas. Now, the second thing that's outlined in this document is the 7 foundations of NSD support. So these 7 foundations are items that would serve as a guiding principle that needs to be respected by all actors who are engaging in NSD support. So let me go one by one and give a little bit of a background. So the first thing is around volunteering and membership. So National Society Development Support needs to be designed and implemented in a way that it respects and supports the principle of voluntary service and membership-owned organization. So it's not going to hinder these core principles of how the National Society is operating. The second thing is the ownership, that the ownership and the primarily responsibility for National Society development rests within the National Society themselves. So that is something that should never be undermined and always be respected when considering supporting National Society for the development. The third thing is continual development as a priority. So National Society development is not a goal. I mean, it doesn't end at one point. Or a national society would always need to consider about its development because the external environment is changing, and then the national societies needs to be agile and shifting or adapting to such context. So we always have to keep in mind that development is a continual process. So the fourth thing is integrity and accountability. And this is national societies must always, at all times, demonstrate both integrity and accountability towards whom they serve to, towards their member, and also to other national society, and again towards the movement. So this is another guiding principle. The fifth principle is about partnership, and the national societies receiving the National Society Development Support must be recognized as leading and coordinating such relationship for partnership, and the relationship to be demonstrated with a mutual, accountable, and respected manner. So it's a both-way accountability among the partner and the National Society themselves, as well as a mutual respectation that needs to be sitting there. The sixth guiding principle is an alignment. So this NSD support from all partners must be aligned with the humanitarian mandate, but most importantly, the priority that the National Society identifies. The final guiding principle is the sustainability. So National Society development is, as mentioned earlier, it's not a short-term thing, or it's a continual journey itself, and that has to be recognized. And also, the support around it should also be understanding its long-term journey that National Society would go through, and also ensure that the support is not a one-go project or a short-term engagement just for a specific project or such. It always needs to be understanding how does this, even if it's a short-term engagement, how does it continue or connect to the long-term view of the National Society, and how sustainable would such support the support have as an impact. So all these things need to be taken in consideration. So as mentioned earlier, this 7 foundations are in a way things that need to be respected whenever any national societies are engaging in national society development support. Now, the next part, this 4 commitments, this is the most important part in this National Society Development Compact. In a way, we have been building those 3 priorities, the 7 foundations, all to connect to these 4 commitments. So let me go through what these commitments are. Now, the first commitment is talking about committing to better identification of national society priorities in national society development. So here it is saying that whenever we're talking about national society development support, it's always important to start by understanding what the national society's priorities are in their own development. And for that, there are different commitments from different actors. So, for example, for the commitment of the national society themselves, it is important that they are willing and also having the responsibility to identify its own priorities and then try to mobilize the support around its priority in the latter stage. Oh, I can now see that Lily is joining, and I hope that you can hear the voice now. Thank you, Lily, for joining, and appreciate if you could maybe mute the mic for now, and we would later open up the space for conversations and discussions. Okay, so if I may continue, again, for this first commitment, there are commitments that the National Society themselves needs to follow, also now commitments from partners to respect the prioritizations that the National Societies themselves have identified, and also commitment from Federation Secretariat to support the National Society to be able to better identify priorities. So this is the first priority, and then the first commitment. And then this then connects to the second commitment, which is the competencies that match the needs. Here is talking about commitments that all of the resources or personnel who be there to provide the support need to be clear with the National Society have outlined. And again, here, if you can have go back to the document, it specifies what commitments from the National Society themselves, partners, the Federation, and also external actors, external partners, such as the UN organization, UN, or it could be any local partners that you engage with. The third commitment outlines, so now with the clear identification of the priorities, and also the competencies that are there to support those priorities. The third commitment is the support is not going to be conducted here and there or overlapping. It's important that the supports are also aligning so that it becomes effective as a network. So here it's talking about how to ensure that the support provided is aligned, coordinated, and also being sharing of its resources or information. And again, here it outlines all of the different roles and commitments of each actor. The last commitment is talking about quality assurance and learning. So when we talk about National Society Development Support, each country has a different priority, a different skill set that needs to accompany those priorities. And then we try to foster an aligned and effective support around it. But there are a lot of learning around it, and also in many cases there are tools that have been effective in those NSD support processes. So what we are trying to also ensure and commit is that these knowledge, resources, tools that are also shared across the movement, across the federation, so that we are collectively learning as a federation, and then also enriching or ensuring that our quality and approaches towards national society development is deepened over the years. So this is the last commitment. Now, as mentioned earlier at this beginning of this 4 commitment slide, each of these 4 commitments has a specific section for that commitment of a national society, commitment of supporting national society, commitment of federation secretariat, and expectation as external partners to also join the commitment. So after this presentation, I hope you can also go back to the document and read the specific part of the commitment that would be linking to your national society. And the last part of the compact is talking about calling for resourcing. So to make sure all of these commitments to be really implemented, there is a call for partners to commit long-term and sustainable and predictable support for national society development. And this support could include funding based on the needs of the national societies. Now, why we're here highlighting about long-term and sustainable and predictable support is it again goes back to that earlier foundation, highlighting that national society development is a continuous journey and also support and commitment also needs to be understanding that long-term journey, and also having an engagement to be sustainable engagement to ensure the sustainable journey of this development of the national society. What I would like to highlight here is already we're receiving some comments as part of this consultation process of the NSD Compact, and we're hearing a lot of the comments that this part, which is talking about resourcing national society development support, is heavily talking about financial support. But again, we also recognize that this is not just financial support, but when we talk about resources, there are human resources, resources through knowledges, so there are various resourcing elements that we need to take in consideration. So I just want to highlight that this part of talking about resourcing national society development support would further be enriched in the next revision process. But nevertheless, here what we try to outline is this call for partners to talking about these long-term commitments, and also align the funds wherever possible to ensure that it's as much as possible to be pooled together so that it allows access for national societies based on their needs or based on their urgencies. Currently, we do have such mechanisms, such as a funding scheme called NISIA, National Society Investment Alliance, or Capacity Building Fund. So we're hoping that these existing mechanisms could be recognized and also enhanced of its possibility and opportunities. And there are also invitations for partners to support the Federation Secretariat in developing tools which are necessary to ensure alignment and learning. So this part, we recognize fully that there are lots of rich tools and knowledges existing in various actors in the Federation. There are partners who have been developing tools and engaging with national society over the years, as well as there are national society who themselves have developed very good practices around developing their national societies. So what we are here expecting is to ensure that these rich knowledge and also lessons learned are able to be shared and also be collected so that it could be able to be shared widely to whoever or whichever national society is in need for access. And also, in case there are gaps in these tools and approaches, that would also allow for further development of the tools. So these are a set of things that are being called for partners, and also inviting partners to join the effort for resourcing the National Society Development Support. Now, this is so far this is the whole part of the presentation, which outlines the background of the National Society Development Compact and also what the main contents are in this document. Now, just very quickly, with the next 5 minutes, I hope I can illustrate what is then the next step for this consultation process. And then after this next slide, I would finish my part and hope we can open up the discussion. So this consultation process, as mentioned earlier, there has been a formal letter sent out to all National Society leadership inviting a comment directly to this text, and then these comments are expected to be sent to this email address that you are now seeing on the presentation slide. Now, during the month of July and August, we have been organizing these regional webinars across the globe. And this is one of the series of the webinars in America region. The deadline for the consultation process has actually been closed last week, but we wanted to make sure that this webinar takes place, and also this webinar comments to be taken in consideration of the revision process. Also, in case you do have a specific comment that which you would like to send it by email and by text, I would like to make sure that we open up the email address until the end of this week. So appreciate if you could send those comments by Friday this week, I think, which is the 16th of Friday, again to this email address that you see here in this presentation slide. After all of these comments being collected, what we are now doing is we're looking into each comment and then taking those comments into consideration for the revision process of the document. This revised documents would be finalized by the Governing Board Working Group on Strong National Societies and Volunteerings, and then they would submit that to the Governing Board in October. And only then, if this is approved by the Governing Board themselves, it will be tabled for the decision and approval in the General Assembly at December end of this year. The consultation, we're having these webinars, so there are National Society leadership, as well as in some cases National Society development practitioners are also joining. So these are two key entities that we're collecting comments. We also have consultation among the Federation Secretariat at all levels as well. And lastly, it's not mentioned here, but we're also having a specific consultation with ICRC as well. So this is the consultation approach that we're taking so far, and also where it leads to. So all in all, this is the presentation part, and I hope that I'm now reading that there has been some audio issues. Apologies if the audio was not clear. And I would finish my presentation here and give it back to William so that we can open up the floor for questions, comments, or your thoughts around this National Society Development Compact. So again, thank you very much for your patience and also for listening to the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation, Naomi, and thank you for your comments. It's time for questions about the presentation or about the NSD Compact. Go ahead.
Webinar.
Question? So, Naomi, no, it's a perfect your presentation.
I'm sure there must be some questions if it was not clear for some part. If you didn't manage to hear some earlier parts of the presentation, I'm more than happy to clarify. Also, I was wondering if maybe this is a close specific question, but would you, when you heard the presentation or read the document, was the 3 priority areas clear for you? I'm asking this because earlier we were hearing some confusion from the readers saying, well, why do we have only 3 priorities, or what is the purpose of these 3 priorities? So I also want to check with the participants here how you felt the relevance, or how you felt the clarity of these 3 priority areas, and not just the priority areas, but also for the other elements as well.
Maybe talk, Naomi, please. You can talk about the NSD webinar around the world, in the other regions. So what is America is now 2 webinars in English now, and the afternoon in Spanish. I don't know what is webinar in the other regions. Can you?
Okay. Yes. So maybe I can share you some comments, because this is something that we are taking in consideration how to revise it. So, Caroline, the question from me was, are the 3 priority areas clear for you? why it's included in the compact, or does it bring some how do you say uncertainty why it's there, or more confusion why only 3 priorities? But because this is one of the things that we're receiving as a lot of questions and comments. So that's one question that I raised to the team. So again, if you have similar thoughts or contradicting thoughts, please feel free to share it with me. Responding to what William was saying, so what the other regional webinars were highlighted or shared as a comment, here are a few things that maybe I would like to share, I'm okay to share. So one thing was very clearly mentioned that there are a few national societies who would like to know what is then the follow-up mechanism to this compact. How is this document going to be monitored or reported so it ensures these commitments are in a way respected or understood or followed? So what kind of follow-up mechanism is expected for this National Society Development Compact? That was one of the highest comments and questions that we've been receiving. So yeah, that's one thing. And this is one thing that we would be looking into in the revision process of the National Society Development Compact. Other things are talking and questioning about, for example, sorry, I'm not very much prepared for this one. And there was also a lot of comments around the 4th commitment, which is talking about learning. So there was a lot of discussion around the role of the partners of supporting national societies. There's a lot of the role that the supporting national societies can play and should play in this 4th commitment, and that part needs to be further elaborated. And thank you, Jeff, also for your comment, saying that the wording on the 4th commitment to be worded as more formal commitments, for instance, like committing to limiting NSD support. Maybe this is the first commitment, commit to limiting NSD support to national society priorities. Okay, I think here's the thinking around how to make sure that the first commitment is also strongly recognized and strongly followed. So we will take this point into consideration as well. Thank you for your comment. So yeah, so these are some of the things that came up quite strongly in the previous webinars with the other regions. Did that answer your question, William? And thank you again. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. For this region, the document has served as input for the construction of the NSD regional strategy. NSD is the input for work and you doing, especially with IFRC now, for relation and cooperation and the NSD work in the region. So it's good tool for us.
Okay, thank you very much, William, for mentioning that. And it's very good to know that there's a follow-up at the regional level. And I think it's also worth highlighting why the compact is now developed, is because we see lots of national society development support happening here and there. And it's also trying to see how we can maximize the effort of all of these support, or all of the efforts of convening this support in an effective manner. So I think this is a document that is not to be sitting in a shelf, but the document which is expected for its, especially the commitments, to be really followed and also being discussed and used whenever there is a dialogue around partnership, or whenever there's a dialogue around how to conduct, facilitate national society development support. So again, I really appreciate that the American Regional Office is also following up on this compact already as a plan, and also for setting this webinar. And I'm reading the comments now, and I'm so sorry that some participants have lost the audio with majority of the presentation, and I'm so sorry that such technical issue occurred. William, can I ask you if this presentation has been recorded and if it's been possible to be shared with the participants?
Yes, of course, it's possible. In the next days, I have the presentation. I need to support for send, but the presentation is recorded now. It's possible. Jeff is the comment, and Naomi, can you see? Jeff Franklin, the arm cross.
Yes, yes, I read the comments, and I also understand that it's not just the fourth commitment, but it's all four commitments to have a stronger wording or a stronger way of formulating the commitments, so that it's not going to be a loose end. So I fully understand and recognize and take these points into consideration. So thank you very much again, Jeff, for raising these points. And I'm actually very happy to see you in the present in this webinar. And thank you for joining. So are there any other questions? Maybe it doesn't have to be writing here in the text. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hands or unmute your microphone and share your questions or comments. Guillermo, is there any questions? Okay, thank you very much, for your question. A question about the three priority areas. So these three priority areas, maybe if I can go back to the presentation. Yes, here it is. So these three priority areas, it's mirroring some of the findings that came out from Strategy 2020 midterm review, and also from many of the findings that comes out from the OCAC self-assessments, that these three priority areas are often the key things that national societies will look into or will develop or will try to enrich its capacities when they're going through their organizational change processes. So this is a part where we're trying to highlight that it's not just limited, NSD support is not limited to these three priorities, but it's always important to keep in mind whatever support that is provided to national society for their development, it always needs to be kept in mind. How would this link to the development of a national society in terms of their volunteering forces, or for the sustainability of the national society in terms of financial terms, and also to enhance the capacities for its integrity, transparency, and accountability. So it's a way putting a highlight to bring the awareness about the importance of these three areas, and also that many of the support, the national society development work would interlink with these three priority areas. But again, I want to highlight it's not limited, that any NSD support, when we're talking about it, it's not just limited to these three priority areas. And what we are hoping to do is, since I think the narrative is maybe not as clear, we would look into these three priority areas to make sure that it's not bringing any misunderstanding or confusion. Thank you very much, Therese, for your question. And does anybody else have any questions, or it can be point of clarification? Again, I'm showing this slide to share that if you have any comments that you would like to share by writing, this email address written here. This will be open until end of this week. So in such case, please do feel free to send your direct comments to this email address. So William, I think, shall we still open the questions? I myself, I'm quite available. And thank you very much, Amelia, for sharing the presentation slide. And also thank you, Therese, for your question, whether we would provide a revised version before submission to the General Governing Board in October. So can I ask if this is a question whether the revised version would be sent to all national societies before the Governing Board? Is that your question? Okay, so in that case, the revised version would be checked by the Governing Board Working Group, but then that revised version and finalized, when the Governing Board Working Group checked it and finalized it, that would go to the Governing Board itself. But then with the approval of the Governing Board, the revised draft is then shared to all national societies prior to the General Assembly in December. So all national societies would receive the revised version before the General Assembly in December, and there is still space at the General Assembly itself to share comments or to have a saying into this final draft version. But we hope that there will be not major comments or major concerns raised in the General Assembly, of course. So that is the purpose that we want to have these webinars, as to serve as a space to receive your thoughts or comments. And also, again, if you have any comments, not as yourself, but if you want to share it as a collective comment from your national society, this email address is open to serve for that purpose. So, again, thank you very much, Therese, for your question. Is there any other question? And again, I would like to highlight, each national society has received the document. Also, I think William has kindly shared and circulated the document as part of the invitation of this webinar. So please, I hope that you would have some time to go back to the original document itself with the background information that has been provided through this webinar. And this webinar presentation is also available and being shared through the link in this chat box. So,
Exactly.
William,
Exactly, Naomi. It's possible to access to the documents in the link that is sent Emiliana in this moment in the chat. So if you don't have a question, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for participating in this webinar. And so we look forward to working. It's time to finish the webinar. Naomi, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, William. And if possible, appreciate if you could share your name and also the National Society in the comment box before leaving, and that would allow us to understand which National Society has participated. So in case you haven't, appreciate if you could do that before leaving. And thank you very much again.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Oh,